Welcome to Real Talk with Rachel Awtrey, where I invite you to delight in life and find joy right where you are. You'll walk away with ideas that you can apply right now. Moments that'll make you go, oh yeah, me too. All from a girl who's just trying to figure out life right alongside you. That's what friends are for, right? It's time to cut the fluff and have some real talk. Cleere.
Yes.
I love you. I'm so glad you came back on the podcast. Also, I need to talk to my friends that are listening that we met for the first time
in person.
I mean, yes, we've known each other online, but we actually got to hug.
It made me so happy.
It was so much fun at a fun
It was so fun.
It was an epic event that you did in Nashville. And I just want to say, I'm just so honored to have been in that room because just the caliber of women, the wisdom that was in the room. I say this a lot. We say this just in general in our workspace, but the rooms that you're in matter. And that was that room that you created was incredible.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I think it's really hard. You have a bunch of women who are used to having to be green light on, right?
Yes.
And the permission to say, hey, look, you can turn it off for a second. You can disconnect while you're connecting. That creates a sacred space. And so I think that's so crucial is to disconnect from other things to connect with what matters in front of you. And so I was just super grateful because the Holy Spirit absolutely did that. That was my prayer. But I thought, okay, that's not something I can do, right? I can't conjure up stripping away and making people be present minded and aware of who made them. And that was totally his doing. And it was so special. And I was so grateful. If I could, I would just do that in every city possible and hug everybody I love and be able to just sit and be together and talk about what God's doing in our lives because it's so cool and it spurs your faith, don't you think?
It does. Yes.
Yeah.
When you're around those people, especially because everyone was walking into that room with a different type of day, a different home that they had left, different situations and circumstances they were walking through in their own life.
Yeah.
And then they walk into this room carrying, needing,
Yeah.
being able to borrow other people's faith. And it's just so
Yes.
cool to see the body of Christ in that tangible way.
It really is. It really is. No, I was so glad that you were there. And I told you this before you started, but I really like Rachel. Do we call it 2.0 or what do we call this, Rachel? We call this Rachel, I think maybe unlocked is what you said earlier. I like
Unlocked,
it.
baby.
Just the bold colors, the you know what? If I want to cut my hair, I'm going to cut my hair because nothing's permanent but the Lord. And I'm just going to show up in the space I'm called to and I'm going to invite other people in. And it's awesome. And it's challenging me. So thank you because I am really enjoying it. So
that is so sweet. No, listen, I just think I saw this reel that is not biblical by any means, but it actually was really sweet. And it was talking about how your 30s are a time in your life where you're able to tap back into your 13-year-old version of yourself and be what did she want from an adult version of me? And not that you're doing it to please her, but you're allowed to fall back in love with those silly frivolous
that
things
innocence. Again. Well, and I think too, to be honest, I think the serious reverent side of us is protected when we give that person space too. Because you can't when everything is so heavy and so serious and it's just you take life and yourself so seriously. I don't feel like the joy of the Lord is obvious. And to be honest, we're quite miserable that way.
Yes.
So it's just hey, look, you can produce all these things and achieve all these things, but where are you fighting for your joy and what does that look like for you? And creating space. And honestly, if you're not good at it, plan it. For me, I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. I lean towards the work versus the play. And so really having to create spaces where you play because guess what? Then you work well and you find your passion again. It reinvigorates your motivation. And two, I found that when I'm trying so hard to write something meaningful, I don't write anything but when I'm just living and I'm experiencing life with people and the complexities and hearing how God's working in their life and I'm in need myself, that's something to write about, right?
That's
and
right.
so
It's so good.
it's just but it takes intentionality. We don't accidentally fall into good rhythms. We have to like discipline ourselves there, you know?
That's right.
And
I'm
so,
like,
but when you
"Clear,
do it,
have you read my manuscript? This is so creepy."
no, no, but if it's about this, I'm gonna read it and be all
Uh,
about it because
it's not.
it's so crucial.
It is. It's just like what you said, like, are
Yeah,
we taking ourselves too seriously? And I like to, I don't know, like, make the case that if any kinds of humans are on this planet, if any group of us should be the most, like, eager for joy, zealous people, just,
should
like,
be believers.
so charming, it should be believers. And, like,
Yes,
sometimes we take, like, the reverence
yes,
part, like, so seriously, but I love what you said, like, if you have God in the right place, then, like, you're actually allowed
yeah,
to rest in his identity instead of trying to be so serious on your own. Like,
yeah.
let God be God and, like, let you be his creation.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to dispel the rumor that walking in joy is
Immature.
any level immature, yes,
Yeah.
and takes away from our pursuit of righteousness. If we know anything about Jesus, we would say that it is synonymous with that, right?
Mhm.
Like to
Mhm.
be a person of joy is to know that my circumstances are not permanent. To be a
Mhm.
person of joy is to know the person of Jesus in the different spaces that I am, to recognize his people, to see beauty everywhere, to see his fingerprints and to give space to him, like all
Mhm.
of those things. And so, all of that is very much taking God seriously, is
That's
to
right.
believe that we can walk lightly, right? And
Mm.
but I do think that there is like a stereotype around it. And I just think that we have to be better about, fighting against it because until we
That's right.
believe it ourselves, like we just don't show up in that way. So,
Ugh,
yeah.
amen. And
Um,
if Jesus himself could, like, sorry, one more thing on this. I'm like,
no,
I could go
yeah.
on forever. I could write a whole book. Ha. Um,
You are.
I did. Like, but if Jesus himself could celebrate and dine and have fun and get to know and be personal, knowing
Yeah. Yeah.
what was to come,
Yeah.
then, like, why can't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, he has given us that same power, that same peace, that same hope, and, like, we
Yeah.
have the end of the story.
Yeah.
So, like, why cannot we
I
celebrate
would I
today?
would say to answer that though, not that there's really an answer, but
Yeah,
I
it's not
think it
rhetorical, so go for it.
no, no, but what I do think, at least maybe even from personal experience, is that we're so busy doing stuff for God, we don't get to be with God. And when we're
Mhm.
with God, the joy comes, right?
That's right.
And so, but when you're doing stuff for God, the pressure's there. So then you're living in this state of striving. It's really hard to be joyful when you're striving.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so I think that's where that conundrum happens. And we have to kind of like go, okay, are we going to rest in his grace and get to have a posture of joy? Or are we going to fight for our worth and operate out of a lack of fulfillment instead of,
Mhm.
like from it? And then that creates this really hard tension spot.
Mhm.
And, so anyway, but that's
Well,
just
this
side
leads us
note.
very well into what I
Yeah.
really was so excited to, like, pick your brain about, is
Yes.
this idea of, like, really the reason why we go after those things and we, oh man, have this approach of, like, I gotta get it right, I gotta do it for
Yeah.
God, I gotta perform or fix or whatever, is
Hmm.
really just, like, from this root desire for power and control in our own
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And you wrote this beautiful devotional, and we'll get into it, but it
Yeah.
is declarations of God's truth to renew your spirit. And I love it specifically because on the back it says, release what you can't control and step
Yeah.
boldly into joy and peace.
Yeah.
And hello, that's what we're
Yep.
talking about.
Yes. Yes.
And like, I want you to speak to the control freak girl for a moment. She probably clicked play
Oh
today because
man.
she was like,
Hmm.
oh, that's me. And I could really, like, I could use some freedom in this because I feel the bondage it has on my life.
Yeah. I think man, it's so our human tendency. Like we first off, like you're not alone and everybody's with you. We
Yeah.
all have our
Welcome to the club.
areas. Right. Like welcome to the universal club. Everybody's in it and they can claim that they're not, but the reality is we fight for control because it often masks itself as responsibility. It
Mm,
often masks itself as stewarding something, and what we're really saying is, Lord, I don't know if I trust your definition of good.
mm,
And so I want to make sure you understand mine. I want to make sure that I fight for the picture and the expectation that I have because I feel like I do know what is best. And we don't realize it's coming off that way, right? All sin really comes from this root of pride. And
mm,
so
mm,
what control does and what the Lord is saying is, hey, look, talking about enjoying life, like we were just saying, like it makes, I think, the Father's heart so sad
Mm.
that we are not getting to enjoy the boundary lines he has given us
That's
because
right.
we're so worried about what's beyond them. And he's like, look, if I have drawn a space for you, it is because within that there is peace.
Mm.
And outside of that is really none of your business. And it's not because I'm not good. And it's not because I'm withholding any good thing from you. It's
Right.
because I love you and I'm protecting you.
Yeah.
And I think the hard thing is a lot of times we have to hit a wall. We have to hit tragedy. We have to hit these places where we are really with our back
Mm.
against the wall before we realize we're not good at control, you know?
And we don't
And
wanna be in control like we thought we did.
no. No, we
Right.
definitely don't wanna be. It's
That's right.
impossible. Like, we weren't created for that. Just like we're not created for fame, we can't steward that kind of pressure. Like, it's
Mm-mm.
just we're not good at it, right? And so but I think for the control freak, for the girl who's like, "I just wish I knew more." There's, like, a really simple statement somebody shared with me. And, I think it was Nicoletta when we were at lunch, and she was
Yeah.
talking about how I think you and I were sitting there listening. We were like, "Oh my gosh, if God wants you to know more, he will tell you more."
Oh, so good.
And
Mhm.
it's like the most simple, like, revelation to have, but it's like, look, if he what he has told you is plenty to have peace and strength and mercy and grace for this day, not the 24 hours beyond it, right? Like, we don't need to borrow from tomorrow. And
That's
what
right.
I've learned is, like, I could sit here and think about where will Sledge go when he's after pre-K, when he's not in a space that's conducive necessarily to the limitations we're currently working with or what he's currently developmentally and all of that stuff. And it's like,
Mhm.
but Clear, Sledge and when he's 5, you when he's 5, the resources when he turns 5, the situation when he turns 5, all of that, guess what? It won't be where he's at
That's
today.
right. That's
And
right.
so that is genuinely like trying to, like, you're about to have a whole new batch of ingredients and you're trying to forecast a recipe 2 years from now. That doesn't make any sense, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so it's just like, okay, Lord, I think, also to looking back, it would really probably behoove us to say, where was I 10 years ago? And could I have predicted today? Could I have predicted the way that he moved? Could I have predicted the miracles? Could I have predicted the way that he was going to do it? I mean, if you think about the stories in the Bible, it
Yeah.
is never the way. Like, I'm not even talking about in our realm of possibility, okay, because God's like, I am trying to get you to understand it's only me. And so his ways and his manners and methods are just so out of this world, right?
That's
I mean, makes a whole lot of sense because he's God. And so for us to try and predict that is such a waste of energy.
mhm.
It is such a waste of energy. It is such a waste of energy. It is such a waste of energy. And we need our energy. We need our time.
That's right.
We need our ability to I also wonder if, like, the reasons why we feel like we're not as creative or as innovative or any of that is because we spend either our time worrying about tomorrow or scrolling to see where everybody's at today.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we're not present minded. And, we know that. And I'm not shaming social media. You and I both use that. I think that became a
It's a
really
tool.
popular,
Yeah.
yeah. And it became a really popular trend for a while to almost be like social media is the devil. And what I would argue to say is whatever thing we're using to cope, right? What we've got to assess is like, what is the soil of our life right now?
Mhm.
You said the room that you're in matters. It matters deeply. Your language matters. Your
Mhm.
rhythms matter.
Mhm.
Um, where like what is distracting you? Like only you know what your soil is, and you can convince everybody by putting a fake flower on top of it, but only you know the health of your own garden. And so,
Mhm.
what it really comes down to is like, what's that look like, right?
Mhm.
Like
Or
to
the people
thinking,
that are close to you. The people that are close to you can
yeah,
tell it's fake or plastic too.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, the health of those people would be that they would speak to it,
That's right.
and to say, "Hey, look, like is your goal to be impressive or is your goal to be obedient?" And they're
Mm.
so very different. And one leaves you completely like the hard thing about being impressive is it only lasts for a moment and it doesn't even satisfy you in the moment that you
That's
get
right.
it. And so then those things happen and then we get to the end of ourselves and we're like, "Oh Lord, it still wasn't what I was looking for." And I'm still experiencing this like lack of rest. And so, honestly, even as a believer, I feel like in the circle that you and I run in this industry and all this stuff, it's like we're talking about restlessness, but I'm like, what are we doing with that? Right? Like,
Right.
we're really good at talking about these concepts, but it's like, okay, Lord, do I actually think you can revive where I'm at? Like, do I
Mhm.
think you can revive a family relationship that has maybe experienced some brokenness and needs healing?
Mm.
Do I think you can revive the fun in my marriage? Do I think you can revive physically things that are happening that, like, you know, maybe the view doesn't seem as promising? Like,
That's right.
if I really think you are the God of that, then like what's going to change in my everyday? And so, like, even with this book, like, it's so simple. It's really so simple. Um which is why it's perplexing why we don't apply it. But I think even throughout it, it's like, where each week, like, you have these declarations. And the point is that, like, for you, Rachel, like, I can see it, like, if I'm breaking it down for you and your family and your two boys,
Mhm.
it's like you're taking those 5 declarations, you're telling them, hey, look, bud, I want you to pull out the verb of these 5 declarations, and we're going to write it. And you, mommy, and daddy, and brother, and we're going to all write it on a piece of paper. And then maybe at dinner or maybe at breakfast, whatever, maybe in the car, whatever the day looks like, because we're going to welcome our reality, right? We're not going to make it based on ideal circumstances. And we are going to talk about that verb. Maybe it's the verb release. Maybe it's the word, and maybe it's the verb ask. And then, like, just bringing that into conversation, because I think as adults, like, think about when you read a kid's book with your kids. It's like, man, that premise of that book comes alive to you because it is simplified. And so then it's like you feel like you actually know how to apply it. And so, same thing is like, okay, how can we apply the living word of God and the truth of his character to our everyday circumstances,
That's so
right?
good. Yeah.
So, I think breaking it down, and what I really, really believe right now in my life that the Lord is showing me is specificity really helps application. Like, if something is general, it's like when you
Mhm.
say, okay, I can shoot it anywhere over there. Well, you don't know when you hit the target. And so, you don't ever feel like you win, like, and wins help us keep going, right? You don't feel like you know where to shoot, so determination is really hard to find. And then celebration feels impossible because you don't feel like you ever really hit it. And so it's
Right.
like giving these more clear, specified ways helps us show up, and it kind of like we fuel our own fire.
Yes, I was about to say
Um,
it
you know
fuels
what I
you.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's
So
so interesting about what you're saying too, I heard that like, man, I wish I could quote it. I wish I knew who said this, but like, if the enemy can't make you sin, he'll make you distracted.
yes, he'll keep you
And
busy. I think it might be either Richard Foster or Dallas Willard said something
Dallas
very
Willard, it was Dallas
okay.
Willard.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes. Yeah, he'll keep
And
you busy.
I loved it because it's so true, like, especially
Yeah.
with when it comes to control, like, uh, uh, he'll give us all these, like, little minutia things that we're just, like,
Mhm.
micromanaging in our
Yeah.
life and, like, trying to just I'm thinking of, like, Inside Out, the movie. There's just, like, this whole, like,
Yeah.
motherboard to, like, our brain, our
Yes.
heart, our emotions, and it's
Yes.
just, like, we're just
Yes.
tinkering with all little fidgets and buttons and dials, and God's like, "Whoa, like,
Mhm.
I got that under control. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I
Yeah.
actually created the board.
You're
I'm the only
actually
one
in
with
the
the user
way.
manual. And also, I need you to look up. Like,
Yeah.
stop."
Yeah.
And it's so true. And I love, yes, I want to go back to what you said about what Nicoletta said, where she was like, if you want to, if you need to know more, God will tell you more.
Yeah.
It's also the simple truth that like knowing more doesn't mean that you're more known. So like
Oh, that's so
knowing
good.
more actually has
Yeah.
nothing to do with your worth, your value, or your
Mm.
identity.
Yeah.
You are who you are, period. No matter
Yeah.
what's living in your heart or your
And you
brain.
take her with you.
Yeah, you take her everywhere she goes and you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this idea too of like having control, knowing the outcome, knowing where we are, knowing our next step has nothing to do with us actually at the end of the day. That we
That's
could
good.
know it. And there's many times in my life that I'm like, wow, praise God, I didn't know that because I think I
Oh
would have
God, yeah.
tucked tail and run. Like
Yeah, like, think about it.
yeah.
Would you show up better if you would know the future? No, 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 no. Answer is a big old no. Nope.
No. If someone
Mm-mm.
would have told you what, like, Sledge's story would be, like, would you have chosen motherhood? Who knows? Like, if someone
Oh
were to
yeah.
have told me, like, Thomas is going to be deployed in a few weeks, it's like, would we have
Yeah.
chosen the military route? Probably not. But
Yeah.
like this is the route. This is the story and journey that God is writing specifically for us, and we would miss out because we would unvolunteer. We
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
back out and take our name off the list many times. I think if we knew
Yeah.
the outcome.
And I think
Um,
what you're saying too is like what we think we want is more info on the assignment, but what
That's
we're
right.
really
Yes.
seeking is the heart of our identity, because our identity knows that, hey, look, whatever he calls me to, he's prepared me for,
That's
right?
right.
Like, and so it's a totally different stance, but I think it's like, okay, wait a second, I need to divert my energy. And what I actually need to educate myself on is the heart of the Father.
Mhm.
And because when you know the maker, and you get to know the creation, oh, okay, well then actually the like walking out of that is so different. It's so
Yes.
different. And it
Yes.
comes from such a, like, one thing I'm really in my life that I'm really yearning for is just like a settled soul, like
Mm.
not a complacent one. Like
Mhm.
complacency is so different from being settled. Like settled in the peace of God. Like, I don't know a more attractive quality than somebody
Mhm.
who has a peaceful soul. I
Mhm.
genuinely am like, can I just carry you with me? And then when I turn into a squirrel on drugs on a roller coaster, can you please calm me down?
It's only funny because I know you. I love you.
It li Like, it's just like where you're like, "Wait a second." And, sometimes, and that's one thing I'm really asking the Lord for right now is like, can you show me how to, like, I really want to rid myself of anything he doesn't want for me,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
create margin. Like, one thing I'm ruthlessly working on, I'm not there yet, but trying to find some better rhythms where margin is built in. It is built in for, like, just literally silence too, because it's
Mhm.
like, I think so many times the Holy Spirit meets us, like, I don't think, like, he's not there to say, "Hey, I have all these answers," but his presence envelops us, and there is something like, it's literally like you step into a machine and you walk out and you're like, "Okay, I still don't know where I'm going, but I'm just,"
Right.
it's like you're transformed. You're different, right?
Yeah.
And so having like that, those margins, and that also protects as far as like your calling, like with your creativity, um, and just like renewed strength and everything. So
Mhm.
anyway, but yeah, like the peaceful countenance.
Mhm.
I have a few people in my life who when I am around them, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you have been with
Mhm.
Jesus, and it is
Mhm.
so incredibly beautiful and
Mhm.
calming. And God, help me hone that. But also, I'm going to take a note from you, because I know one thing that he's like infused with me is like a childlike joy. And what he
Mhm.
showed me is like, do not dim that. Like,
Mhm.
that is not, you're not in the way. Like, and you're like, that is not like, he really wants that to shine. And so giving
Yeah.
space for that, and never seeing it as like a lack of maturity or wisdom or revelation,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and when you choose joy and peace and joy overflow from a space of knowing, like, my God is in control, which gives me the
Yeah.
freedom to really like be obedient and discern like what it looks like right now, whether that's to put on display joy for my boys
Yeah.
or take a nap. Like
Yeah.
he gives you the discernment and you're actually allowed to be off the hook. Because
Yeah.
in reality, like God doesn't need us to
Yeah.
complete different missions. He just asks us to partner with him. He's like, I mean, I'll
I
get it
want to
done. I
I
just
want
want
to
you to
ask
go
you a
with me.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know how you've been, because I noticed you've been posting too, just like some ways that you've been fighting for joy and like the little
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
And it's really cool, Rachel, because I think you give people very practical ideas of
Clear.
like in a very realistic time frame, life, budget, all of that, where it's just like, here are just some little ways I saw the fingerprints of God. Like, do you feel like kind of you're almost keeping yourself accountable to seeing those now? Because
100%.
like, isn't it, don't you feel like you've seen them so much more?
Yes. So, like
Yeah.
Lisa Turker says, you steer where you stare. Like my
Yeah.
husband and I are looking at different larger vehicles right now. So we're looking at like
Yeah.
just random. We're looking at like GMC Denali's and we're looking at Suburbans, like Chevy
Yeah.
Suburbans.
Yeah.
And can I tell you, I've seen them everywhere now.
Oh,
Not
of
that they
course.
didn't exist before,
Yeah.
but it's like it has been
It's
moved
top
to
ahead.
top of
Yeah.
mind.
Yep.
And just like Lisa says, like if you are looking in a certain way, like you will go a certain way. And that is
Yeah.
psychology, that is biology, that is just how we've been crafted as humans. And I don't think
Yeah.
it's by any silly design. I think that's exactly how our heart operates too. And then when we're
Yeah.
on the hunt, it's so hard to not see it. Um,
Yeah.
And I want to be someone who's like fun to be around. I want my legacy when I'm no longer on this earth to be like, wow, she gave me a new layer of
Mm.
hope and joy despite what was against me.
Yeah.
And you're so sweet to say that, because sharing it online definitely helps me be kept accountable. But I'll be honest, it's totally an overflow place now where
Yeah.
it's so fun too to be a mom in that way. And like I can see my boys like 2 days ago opened up the back door and it was like our first cool morning. And Maddox
Yeah.
stepped out. He goes, "Oh, this is just so beautiful right now." And I
Oh
was
my god,
like,
that's so cute.
so cute, right? And it was also evidence where God's like,
Yeah, he recognized it.
he recognized it because it's a discipline that we have to
Yeah.
grow in. It is a
Yeah.
muscle that has to be strengthened. It is not
Yeah.
just like a natural reaction that humans have
Yeah.
been designed to experience. That's happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joy is a fruit, it's a discipline. It is like you
Yeah.
have to get good at joy.
Yeah.
And you
And
can't
that's
afford
also
to
you,
not.
like, protecting him because you know he's gonna come up against, like, or y'all as a family will have stressful seasons. Y'all will have times of, where oppositions just seems where,
Mhm.
like, even with, you and Thomas or whatever it is, like, just
Mhm.
things that just seem a little bit, harder. And so when you have that as a habit, those habits
Mhm.
protect you. And so then even in those seasons, like, you're like, "Wait a second. Okay, I was falling back, but I fell on in a place of
Mhm.
joy because that was a place that I've cultivated and it was there. It wasn't like in the midst of that hard season, you tried to create a discipline that was like really, really hard pressed to create.
Mhm.
So I think that's important. And I think as a mom too, like it protects just your soul because as you're mothering and nurturing and showing up, it it helps you see, it helps you feel seen, it's
Mhm.
those both, and it helps you look out and it helps you know God's already looking in. Like I always am better at looking out and not being introspective with my thoughts, which
That's so
protects
good.
me from being, an anxious person when I know God's looking into me. And
Yeah.
so then I'm like, no, I can keep my outward focus. Like I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about that, but it is like that coming back to.
Yes.
And
It
yeah,
gives Maddox too, like to go back to the example, the language where like say we walk out and it's a rainy day.
yeah,
Right? Like he has called to mind that sunny days do exist. He has called to mind that
yeah,
glorious mornings are to come.
yeah,
And he's like, all
yeah,
right, it's not going to rain for forever. And
yeah,
hopefully, prayerfully, this will translate to his life too, where,
yeah,
and I even think like the reason why we probably go and exercise Clear, ho- hopefully, like the most healthy reason is that we can be strong and fit
yeah,
to live the life we've been
yeah,
called to live. And so,
yeah,
like, I go to the gym and I lift weights or I go to Pilates or whatever, and I use the equipment there to strengthen the muscles that I will then
yeah,
use in real life. And
yeah.
it is the same. It's like we have to go to a gym for our
Mhm,
heart to learn the
mhm,
discipline, the posture, the
mhm.
ways to do it without hurting ourselves so that
Right.
when the real life examples come
Yeah.
or you need to like pick up your kid really quickly because they're in danger, like you
Right.
can and your muscles are familiar with that action. Our
Yeah.
hearts and joy are the exact same way. Like we
Oh,
have to be
totally.
practicing it so that when we're in it, we're like, I've done this before. I know how to do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would argue that when you physically make yourself uncomfortable to the point
Mm.
where you understand tension is what grows you, you do it in emotional spaces, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
even as like working out or pushing yourself there, I would argue literally that like that practice is a lot of times what allows you, maybe you're having a conversation with a friend and you don't pull away because you have grown to learn that growth
Hmm.
happens amidst the tension, the stressful
So
places.
good,
Like
Clear.
that's where God is doing the underworkings, right? So it's like, wait a second, I've learned that when I stay in the gym and I push past this place, a muscle grows, strength follows. Like, so I can stay in this place of tension and it doesn't mean that there's going to be a lack of peace. It means that
Or
I'm
it
actually
breaks
going to
me.
get, yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or perhaps even this is what this is made for. Because
Hmm.
how do you know something is trustworthy until it's forced to bend a little, right?
Hmm.
And so it's like those places are so necessary for friendship, for relationships. I mean, I remember when we first got married, and I retreat. Like when I get upset, when I get sad, when I get angry, like
Yeah.
if I'm not talking, you should be concerned because I am probably like I start to maybe fear rejection, fear abandonment, like.
Mm.
And so I remember Will telling me, "Hey, look," like he literally said, "Hey," and he was like holding up his wedding ring, and he was like, "This was just like a conversation, like." we're here for the long run. Like, we've got to get better at
Mhm.
talking things out when we know that we vehemently disagree. Like,
Mhm.
because, and what I'm learning is actually now I don't get excited per se because he's an attorney and he's really good at keeping record of like details. And I am like
Arguing is
so
his
not.
profession. We love it.
I am
That's
the
so fun.
opposite. I'm like, I feel this way. He's like, can you provide some examples? I'm like, examples? What? No, I feel this way. That's all I got, you know? And so, but I've learned is like, then it makes me actually excited because on the other side of that, I
That's right.
trust it more. And
Yeah.
so, it's just like, it's like that with everything.
It's
And,
resilience. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And we
Mm.
want resilience. We want resilience. We want miracles. We want faith. We want perseverance. And we don't want what it takes to stay there. And so, that's the hard
Mhm.
part. Yeah. And
But
so
it's
it's just like,
possible.
oh, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
And the more, I think about even with like, I was actually watching this reel and it was about these men who are helping with the hurricane relief in, Western North Carolina. And they were talking about just how they were interviewing and saying just like, man, you're putting your body and your mind in these places of like hard tension, and like what gets asked of you is like how do you even know how to help these people? I mean, you're just kind of put in these
Mhm.
impossible situations. None are the same. And the guy was like, I've learned that when you do this enough, there's really nothing that's impossible if you stay the course.
Mm.
Like, if
Mhm.
you're just like, look, we're all committed to this and we're all in it together, and we're going to be tired and when we're exhausted. And when my hands drop, his will take, like, there's somebody else beside me. He signed up for it too. And it was just such a reminder to me, like, man, when you decide like resilience is something that, it's a really, we need it in every season, right? And we need it like no matter what we do. And I think it makes the Father so proud,
Mhm.
um, because it's saying like, "Hey, we trust you above all that we see." And I think
Mhm.
the more that we learn to trust the invisible, the more we realize that the invisible is the realest thing that we have. It's
Mhm.
giving. It's like if the lights were flipped. Okay, imagine it like everything we can see turned off, and we did a little flip of the switch, and everything we can't see turned on. It would be so much more real and informative and in control than anything that we're actually touching and holding.
That's
And
right.
it's like, oh my gosh, wait a second. Why was I not trusting that instead of trusting what I am seeing,
That's right.
And so
Oh,
I
I
just,
say that all the time too with even just like I mean, practically our health. Like, what
yeah,
are different viruses and different
yes.
things that like my immunity is taking care of in this ticking
Oh, that's so
moment that
true.
we record
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
that my creator is protecting me from, that has given me the nutrients to fight that like
Yeah.
I don't even know what battles my body is fighting.
Yeah.
How
That's so
can we
good, Rachel.
like how like I mean I'm even thinking like growing life and being pregnant.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to show up for that. You just have to
Yeah.
like feed yourself and drink some water and take your prenatal
Like,
vitamins.
don't you wish, yeah, seriously, don't you wish that we could get a list where it's
Yeah,
like things the Father has protected you from? And it was just
that
like,
you will never know. Yeah.
oh my gosh, it would be like a constitution, right? Like,
It'd be a
good
Walgreens
Lord.
receipt on there.
Seriously, and honestly, you know what mine would be? Like, the whole, like, first 64 pages would be like, "Yourself, yourself, yourself."
Yeah,
He has protected you against yourself. What
that's
you
right.
thought you desired, what you thought you wanted, what you thought you needed, what you thought you were good at, what you thought you weren't good at, right?
Yeah.
And, man, it's just grace upon grace. But yeah, it
Yes.
is.
We just don't
It
know to
is.
give him credit all the times because we don't know
Yeah.
what to give him credit for, and that's where I'm like and that's why he is just above all else and on the
Yeah.
throne, and he just deserves all praise. He is worthy
Yeah.
of all praise. Like,
Yeah.
what is it? The hills will be shaken or the mountains will be shaken and the hills will be removed, but his unfailing
Yeah.
love for us will not, like, will not be
Will never
forsaken. Like,
fade. Yeah.
he's here
I
forever
love
and ever
that.
and ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't fret.
Yeah,
Don't freak out.
truly. And I mean, in those moments, I think that's where we have to be. I think that's where those like spiritual formation, this is a whole other like deep thing. And I know we don't have a ton of time. So it's like, woo, okay, going in the deep end like super quick. But spiritual formation is really like kind of the infrastructure. I always say it's kind of like the highway system, right? Like these built
Mm,
in like roads, right? And the spiritual disciplines are what actually like allow us to drive down those roads. And
mhm.
so I think it's incredibly important in this day and age to be aware of both, to have the infrastructure where we can be a person of peace, and then also to have rhythms and disciplines that allow us to actually drive down that interstate.
So good.
And both take a lot of intentionality, both take a lot of being countercultural.
Mm.
Both. I mean, I know this is just so trendy to say, and it's just so true. It's like, how old am I going to get before I trust that slowing down actually makes us so much more aware and efficient and healthy? And so, it's just like it's just breaking those addictions to hurry and productivity and what we think is our worth and other people's perception and all of
That's
that.
right.
And but it's like the more that you do, the more you realize, like, oh my gosh, okay, like he was right. Like they're, and he multiplies our time. Like I've
Mhm.
seen him do that so frequently lately where I'm just like, oh my gosh, that thing got taken care of. And I think also in that it's kind of like where he repacks our book bag, we are carrying what matters. So then we run faster. So like not only is our time multiplied, but we're going towards the starting line. We're actually focused, right? Like you said, like
Mm,
where we focus, we follow is what you said. Where we steer, we stare. Okay, so I always
mm.
say, or where we stare, we steer. Yeah.
We steer where we stare. You got this.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Same
Whatever
thing.
it is.
I
Same
love
thing.
all those
Tomato,
iterations. Yes,
tomato,
yes, yes.
tomato. Um. So, but yeah, just like but yeah. Anyway, slowing down. Like I think
Yeah.
that is something where we all know it. And I think at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what am I going to have to break away from or
Mm,
say no to or
mm,
reschedule in my life? Or just decide, like, wait a second, I think I'm going to have a different normal. And I think I'm going to have to disrupt where I'm at.
mhm.
And disruptions are, I'm sorry, you're always going to have a level of grief when you have a disruption in your life. That's just like human nature,
Yeah.
even when you know it's good for you. So I think that, giving yourself permission and creating that space and that time is pertinent to like experiencing the fulfillment that he has for us.
Mm.
So
Clear. 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 My
anyway,
girl. Always, always bringing the heat. I love it.
I'm sorry. I just keep talking because I just really want to sit down and just be able to have 5 hours where we just first we should go get
I know.
guacamole. Then I
Yes.
would like to just wear your Joy sweatshirt and sit on a couch
There you go.
and just not get off of it.
Well,
And
I'm glad that you wrote all your words in a book. I mean, like, it's so funny, like, all my friends that like to chat,
yeah,
I'm like, and
right,
that's why
yeah,
your book is, like, so precious is and Devos and all of your resources. Because 'cause I'm
mm.
like, yeah, you have so much to say, you might as well bind it, and the Lord has just been so so evident in your own life. Print it, boo. Go print it.
Yeah. Oh
And you
my
did.
gosh.
Where
Yeah.
can
Well,
people grab this? Because I want people like, this is well, also, I just think this is perfect timing because I think this is gonna be, like, great for a gift. It'd be great
yeah,
for, I mean, for yourself if you're looking to start any kind of new devotional
yeah.
this quarter in the new year. So, yeah,
Well, and I
just
think
shameless plug.
yes. Well, I first just really quick wanted to speak to the word revive because I think we hear it and we have a connotation that it requires like either it has to be like Lazarus from the dead. It has to be this like crazy big situation in our lives. And or we're like, no, I don't or I just don't think we really understand what God means by it. And really it's just like, hey, if you need a fresh wind, like if you've
Mhm.
been working a job and you just kind of feel like you've lost your purpose there, like you kind of lost your motivation, you're struggling. If maybe you're just tiring out of your like normal, like
Mm.
whatever that looks like, if you're a mama and you're just like, Lord, if I don't have my energy or my strength revived, um, I just am not showing up for my kids because I'm struggling to show up for myself
Yeah.
and I need help. Or maybe like your marriage, like, Lord, I need you to revive like my belief in my husband because I
Mhm.
have not been pouring into him. And therefore, where you don't invest, like you start to distance yourself from,
Mhm.
right? And so, like these little things, like, but they're big, right? And so, or it could be something as big as like, God, I need a miracle. Like, I need you to step into my circumstance and I need the sun to stand still. And I'm asking for your presence because I know that it's palpable and I know it's true and I believe it for my life. And so, will
Mhm.
you help me? Like,
Mhm.
I am asking and knocking on the door. And I just wonder how many miracles we don't experience because we are afraid God won't do his part.
Mm.
And I'm here to say that he will. Like he never has never, ever, 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 ever in the history of mankind, nor will he ever not show up and have a perfect track record. And so we can be people who believe he is who he says he is.
That's
And
right.
so what that means is that we invite him into the little things, the big things, the things that are stale or stagnant or tired, need a fresh wind, need whatever it is. And
Mhm.
that we have new language, right? And that we welcome mercy and we give ourselves grace,
Mm.
you know? Um, I don't want to be someone who was, it's great to be kind to others, but also like, I want to learn to be kind to me.
Mhm.
You know, I think that
Mhm.
would please the Father. And I think somebody who is kind to their own soul learns to be even more kind to other people. And so, just like whatever it is, I really believe that this devotional can just kind of like plug right in to where you're at. Like it's not asking you to have a new reality. It's not asking you to go find a new set of circumstances. It's saying, I want you to invite God in right where you are, because he's already there. What I
Mhm.
want you to do is become aware to his
Mhm.
presence, because
Mhm.
that is the game changer, you know?
Notice him.
Um,
Yeah.
Yes, but yes, as far as where it is, it's on Amazon. It's wherever books are sold. Amazon's a great beast that ships like in 30 seconds
ASAP.
apparently,
Yeah.
and so crazy. I'm like, wait, I talked about these shoes. Oh my God, did I order them? They're at my door. It's so wild.
I know. I literally got like 2 humidifiers, one for each of the boys' rooms last
Oh,
night because
smart.
it's that
Yes.
season,
Yes.
and they were on my doorstep by 4, and I think I ordered them at like 11 a.m.
See,
I was like,
that's
"That's
like
so weird."
it's so weirdly awesome, scary, good. I don't know.
I
The
don't know.
combination. I'm
It's
not gonna hate
training
on
me
it.
to
I
be
know.
less patient.
I know, it's so true. It's like immediate gratification, but wait, it's possible. But
Yeah.
also like, yeah. And then everything's on clearlystated.com.
Yeah.
Kind of, the where all the other gifts and different encouragement and all that can be found. So
Oh, well, you're a gem. I'm so
mm,
glad that we're friends. I'm so glad I got
I'm
to hug
so
you in real
glad that
life
we're
in Nashville.
friends. I
Wait,
know.
where were
Oh,
we?
wait,
We're in Dallas.
Dallas. You said Nashville earlier, but I wasn't going to correct you. It's okay. But I am going to Nashville soon. So I was just running with it. I was like, yeah, it's happening.
One of those super fun
Yes,
cities.
that's
One
right.
of those. I'll go anywhere.
It is so
Like,
true.
I think it's because like wasn't such a bamboozle because that trip I literally was there for like less than 12 hours. I
Yeah, it
flew,
was a crazy quick trip for you.
yeah, I flew in at
Um,
like 9. I flew out at 3 or something like
yeah.
that.
Oh my God,
Mhm.
that's insane.
It
But
was worth it.
I am campaigning for us to do a retreat of some kind. I'm not a planner, so I just need like someone else to plan it, and then like everyone just go. I was just talking
Ugh,
to a friend about this, and I was like, oh,
we will figure this out.
I'm not great at like the detailed planning part. I will like do whatever to help with it, but not my strong suit. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to jump on someone else's bandwagon whenever that occurs. So anyway,
As you should.
just yeah. So we
You can
should,
jump on
well,
my bandwagon.
I
Shoot,
totally
I'll
will.
have
I
you
have a
any day.
feeling it has flags on it and music. I believe it serves tacos. And
It's the best bandwagon you'll
don't
find.
you think? I know.
I
Yes,
love it. Well, I love
exactly.
you. Thank you for
I
being here,
love you.
sister.
And I'm proud of you.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode with us. It would mean the most if you took 30 seconds and left us a 5-star review in whatever platform that you're listening in right now. It's one of the best and free ways that you can love on us. So don't forget that anything we mention in today's episode, from resources, products, and more, can all be found in our show notes at realtalkwithrachel.com. For more updates, behind the scenes, and fun chats, head over to Instagram and follow us at Real Talk Podcast.